Hey, welcome to my channel, or welcome back if you're a subscriber. I'm Riddle, and I want to talk about something really strange and something extremely serious. In general, I am a very logical, scientific person, but there is something happening where I live that it doesn't border, it straight out exemplifies conspiracy. There's something going on, and we can't figure out what it is. And that is our local medical community and our local health department and local authorities are refusing to recognize that we have Lyme disease prevalent in our area. And not only are they lying to us and saying that it doesn't exist or hardly exists in the area, but they often, if you are bit by a tick and you go to a doctor and you're bit by a tick and you're having any kind of strange symptoms that are red flags for Lyme disease, early Lyme disease, the doctor will often refuse to put through the test or the blood work, allow you to take the Lyme disease test. So here you are, you're paying for the insurance, it's your health, and the doctor is telling you Lyme disease doesn't exist around here. And so they're refusing to protect you and do what you're asking them to do. And it's not an expensive test, it's not expensive blood work. Recently, one of my friends who is feeling under the weather in a very specific way and knows that she was bitten by a tick and didn't get the antibiotics right away, went to her GP, asked for a Lyme disease test, and was refused in Santa Cruz, California. So for over a decade, I was displaying all of these strange symptoms that were arthritis, fatigue, brain fog, blah, 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 all the typical Lyme disease stuff. And when I finally, through a friend's suggestion, was tested for Lyme disease, and it came back not only positive, but I had a crazy amount of measurable bacteria, Lyme bacteria, spirochetes in my blood. Even after that, the doctors at Stanford and a rheumatologist in Santa Cruz who said, if indeed, these results come back positive, we will help you, completely abandoned me. So while I was on this journey of figuring out if I had Lyme disease and then post Lyme disease, trying to figure out treatment, these are some of the things that happened to me in Santa Cruz, California. First of all, I was abandoned by all medical professionals, except for this small local doctor who did his best to help me, but because of the weird restrictions they've put on treatment in this area, was not able to legally do the CDC recommended Lyme treatment for people when the disease has pronounced itself as neurological. The disease had pronounced itself as neurological in me because I had developed Bell's palsy. I'd lost half the use of my face and a bunch of other stuff. So I was never given the proper treatment, A. When I called the health department to talk to them and also to record the fact that I had contracted Lyme disease, they gaslit me, and they treated me as if I was crazy. And when I tried to tell them, the severity of this, the woman literally was like, well, you know it now, right? And you got antibiotics, so what's the big deal? Lyme disease is very rare in this area. And we measure and we go out and we blah, 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 blah. So to contradict her idea, when I found out and when I was in the process before getting tested for Lyme disease, we lived on a street that only had 8 houses. 7 of the 8 people on our street in Santa Cruz, California, near Scotts Valley, had contracted Lyme disease, but they were able to have it treated early. The neighbor's dog, when I was tested for Lyme disease had active Lyme disease, but they couldn't treat it because they had puppies. The phlebotomist, the woman who took my blood for the test for Lyme disease before I knew, her husband, who works outside, he's a linesman and works with tree trimming, had Lyme disease. And anywhere you go in Santa Cruz, if you're standing at a pharmacy or anywhere and you bring it up and there's a line of people, it is guaranteed that someone else, if not several people in that line, know someone directly whom have been affected by Lyme disease. But Lyme disease doesn't exist in Santa Cruz, California, or the area. What is going on? What is going on? It's bad enough that when you get it, you can't get any treatment around here. And so basically it's like a death sentence. It's literally a death sentence, because when you live with Lyme disease and the symptoms, you are like the living dead. And eventually, if not treated properly, it makes its way into the brain, into the heart. And the shocking thing is that on the East Coast, when you go to any of their websites, numerous videos from extremely advanced, extremely accomplished doctors and scientists at Johns Hopkins, at Columbia, etc., on the East Coast. They are all up to date and are taking this very seriously. And they approach their people that have Lyme disease very seriously and do their best to give them every treatment possible and to make them functional. But here on the West Coast at Stanford, which is supposed to be one of the biggest, best, and brightest research hospitals in the nation, if not the world, they treat it like it is like it's mythology. They treat it like it's folklore. It is so bizarre. And to have, I had a rheumatologist, so I had this appointment with a rheumatologist, because often when you start getting the symptoms of Lyme disease, you get this crazy joint pain. So then next thing you know, you're getting sent to the specialists. And so you go to the rheumatologist, because that's usually what arthritis is. And then they test you and they're like, oh, you don't have arthritis. Oh, you don't have lupus. Oh, there's nothing wrong with you. Oh, maybe it's depression. And then, they send you to this specialist, and then they send you to a psychiatrist. The psychiatrist says, there's nothing wrong with you. Why isn't someone helping you? And you go in this constant loop of madness. It is so, well, first of all, it's costing the nation millions and billions of dollars, not only with unnecessary healthcare costs when you go into this loop with your insurance company, but then when you're not treated for Lyme disease and you become disabled, imagine what that cost is. And there's something like over 2 million people dealing with Lyme disease right now, and those are just the people who know they have Lyme disease in this nation. So recently, because it was so interesting, I had an appointment with a rheumatologist just as I had ordered my tests through Stanford for my Lyme disease. Now, luckily, my doctor didn't gaslight me at Stanford, and she allowed me to, she put the test through. But I kept my appointment with the rheumatologist because it's so difficult to get in to see a specialist, as you know. And supposedly we have such great health care, right? Because it's so affordable and you still have to wait several months to see a specialist. Bullshit. And so I had the test results a few days before I went to the rheumatologist. Here I took these test results to the rheumatologist in Santa Cruz, showing her positive for Lyme disease, exact titer count and everything. She said that she thought it was a false positive. Even with the quantified titer count, the amount of bacteria that was in my bloodstream, retested me because, Stanford's labs, Stanford's standard isn't good enough for this rinky doctor in Santa Cruz, this rheumatologist. But if indeed I had tested positive for Lyme disease, that they would help me. So when she got this exact same results from her magical blood tests, who knows what was different about those than Stanford's blood tests, she then told me, we do not treat Lyme disease, we can't help you. And she completely abandoned me. And this, excuse me, I'm just going to curse. Actually, she still got paid. My insurance company still had to pay this doctor probably $500 or more. And not to mention the waste of money with the lab work, and then to have no shame to completely abandon me with no help. So recently, I've been dealing with this now, the knowledge of this and dealing with the Lyme disease, trying to rehabilitate myself for 3 or 4 years now. So recently I reached out to Stanford one more time because they claim they don't treat Lyme disease. And I discovered something new, and that was, so ticks carry more than one kind of pathogen. You could get bit by a tick and have Lyme disease, and you could have other pathogens also. But when they tested me for Lyme disease, to humor me, saw that it was positive, saw that I was displaying all the neurological symptoms of someone who had a severe case of being infected by Lyme bacteria, they never thought to test me for any of the associated pathogens that ticks carry. So now I realize that a lot of the symptoms I'm still having are specific to this other pathogen. And so I reach out to my doctor and basically tell him, sloppy medicine, Stanford. Like, why do I have to be the doctor? Why do I have to figure this shit out? Why aren't you doing your job? Regardless, if you treat Lyme disease or not, because supposedly they don't treat Lyme disease there, shocking, still, you did the test, so do it thoroughly, do it correctly. So you can imagine how I'm treated because I'm smart enough that I know how to do the research and I know how to call these so-called medical professionals out when they're not doing their job and when they're trying to dismiss me. And again, not to abuse the word, gaslight me, disrespect me, ignore me. So I said, listen, I want to do the associated tests to see if I have any of those pathogens. So what they do is they try to humor you. They kind of treat me like a woman. And the doctor has this very kind, assistant. And so then he reaches out to me because, I just want to, I care about you and I hear you, and so they're trying to validate you, like you're this emotional train wreck, like they're just trying to pacify you. So what I said to him was, well, thanks, that's awesome, but I don't really need my hand held. I need help because initially when I was left completely disabled, there was no rehabilitation. There was no help. There was nothing to manage my pain. There was nothing to manage my cognitive issues. I had to figure everything out on my own. If I was an average person with no resources, I would have literally been bedridden and possibly have died. And this is with having great insurance, and this is with being a patient at one of the top hospitals in the nation and living in one of the wealthiest communities in the nation. Can you imagine? What are other people doing that don't have the intelligence and the tenacity and the resources that I do? And I'm still getting no results. So I wrote this assistant, and I was finally able to pull enough of my thoughts together to articulate it in a really sensible, really targeted manner. And this is what I said to him. I said, okay, I understand that you claim that Stanford doesn't treat Lyme disease. According to Stanford, it doesn't even exist, basically, is how they treat you. And they refused to give me the CDC recommended treatment for the Lyme disease, which should have been intravenous antibiotics at the least. Okay, so great. Thanks a lot for nothing. But if I came to you, and even if you were a GP, even if you're just a general practitioner, and you discovered that your patient had cancer, your patient had kidney disease, your patient had diabetes, it's your oath as a professional to refer this person to someone. If you can't help them, isn't it a doctor's duty to get them help, to find them the resources or help them to find the resources, at the minimum, to help them sleep, to help alleviate their pain, to help them alleviate their anxiety. All of these things are symptoms that go along with Lyme disease, because you're living in chronic pain, you're living in chronic fatigue, and it messes with your circadian rhythms, and it does a host of other bizarre things to your brain, to your organs, to your emotions. And yet, they left me with nothing. And that was my last letter to Stanford. And I have an appointment to go there. I'm going to drive an hour, hour and a half one way for them to do nothing for me. But I also sent my doctor the list of Lyme disease, associated Lyme disease symptoms. And I highlighted the 93 to 95% of symptoms that I'm still experiencing. And it's just like my spouse said, you're the one being the doctor. You're having to figure out everything for yourself. The reason right now I'm able to focus and articulate so well, because it's been a really hard week for me, is that I finally submitted today and took medication. I had to figure that out for myself too. I was in so much pain, and so I couldn't string a sentence together, that out of desperation, I asked all my friends, do you have any leftover drugs? Do you have any painkillers? Any anxiety? What do you have? What do you have? What do you have? One of my friends, my young friends, had Adderall. And I took a half an Adderall, and I was like, oh, this is what it feels like to have energy and to feel normal and functional again. So when I went to my GP and said, listen, I'm going to full disclosure, this is what I've been doing to rehabilitate myself. And he could see that I was doing well at that time. And he could see, and he knows that I don't have addiction issues, and he knows I'm smart and sensible. And he respected me enough to say, okay, it looks like we need to get you a prescription for Adderall. But the thing is, Adderall, for someone my age, it's very hard on your heart. It's not good for the body. And it gives you energy, but it gives you this false energy. It's this weird energy. You know what I mean? It's not sustainable. It's just a Band-Aid, like most of Western medicine. It's a Band-Aid. I'm grateful to have it on the really hard days, but I just refuse to believe that this is going to be the rest of my life. And so now what am I doing? In conjunction with trying to get the doctors to do what they should do, and trying to figure out and put all the puzzle pieces together and play doctor without a medical degree. Of course, I'm doing all the nutritional things that they recommend. And I recently have started, just out of desperation, bee venom therapy. What is bee venom therapy? Well, a lot of people in the Lyme community, including one of my neighbor's friends who was bedridden and now is functional, claim that by introducing bee venom to your system, that the bee venom is one of the few chemicals that can reach areas where Lyme disease bacteria hides, that medication can't get to, like the blood-brain barrier and spinal fluids, blah, blah, blah. And it can also penetrate these biofilm, or these little cocoons that they claim the bacteria can build up around it to protect itself from toxins and the immune system, in order to keep replicating and stay in your system. And supposedly the bee venom is helping a lot of people. But have I noticed any change yet? No. What does it entail? Agony. I go out into the yard, I collect 10 to 12 bees on Monday, on Wednesday, on Friday, and I sting myself up and down my spine with 10 to 13 bee stingers. And if that's not enough, of course, afterwards, about an hour, half hour to an hour afterwards, I have this anaphylactic response, which means fatigue. And so I finally learned to do it at the end of the day. And I've got my system in place so that I'm not like trashing my entire day. But that's the night that we have to order out, or my spouse has to cook dinner. But so now I'm on that train, and I shared that with my doctors too. And I told the people, I won't even call them doctors at Stanford, that this is the level of desperation that people reach with this disease. This is the level of desperation. And this is why, I have absolutely no respect or trust for Western medical doctors or the Western medicine at this point, because of what I've experienced through this Lyme disease experience. And I have literally been traumatized in regards to dealing with doctors. You wouldn't believe how many doctors I've gone through because they didn't listen to me. They didn't listen to me. And even when I spent 4 days in the emergency room, going back every day at Santa Cruz, at the hospital in Santa Cruz, I had every red flag of Lyme disease, and they missed it. Still, $10,000 later, nothing wrong with you, sent me home. They tried to send me to a sports medicine doctor, like a rheumatologist. I walked in there. At that point, I had a catheter bag. I had Bell's palsy. He looked at me. He said, "Oh my God, you're a mess. I can't treat you. I can't help you." And he sent me away, but he didn't send me to another medical professional. So that was another, who knows, $500,000 to my insurance company. I mean, what I've gone through and what people with Lyme disease and chronic fatigue go through is intense. It's intense and it's insane. The most the rheumatologist could recommend was acupuncture. And that's the thing. I do believe that a lot of Eastern medicine works, and I think Eastern and Western medicine can sometimes work in conjunction. But what I was dealing with was so far past acupuncture at that point. So that's it. There is a huge conspiracy happening on the West Coast in regards to the recognition and treatment of Lyme disease. And I'm putting this video out there because you may be dealing with it. You may be dealing with, I want to say one more thing really quickly to validate my experience. So because I have great insurance, because my spouse works for Apple, when I can't get help, when I'm not getting results in regards to healthcare, I can go to and be assigned a nurse advocate, a health advocate, to help me figure things out and to help me find resources. I was working with a health advocate, both pre and post Lyme disease, and they were amazing. They were helping because at that point I thought I was trying to find the answers for chronic fatigue. So I was finding, alternative medicines, and I was finding, anything I could do to help me with the chronic fatigue. But then when the Lyme disease thing happened, then it was trying to find treatment for the Lyme disease anywhere near where we lived. And then it was really intense because at the end of my journey, working with this nurse advocate and her boss, who was a doctor, they came back to me and said, "Mr. Riddle, we have never experienced anything like this in our career. And indeed, it's not you. There's something strange going on, and we can't find any treatment for you, and we can't find any help for you either." Because basically, because there is no, at this point, no actual treatment for Lyme disease, and there's no recognition of chronic Lyme disease, the insurance company refuses to pay for any kind of alternative treatment or any kind of treatment at all, because they've yet to verify any proof that the intravenous antibiotics or anything else is actually helping with this condition that they can't explain. Meaning they think you get oral antibiotics and that's it. But now there's all this evidence. There was a woman in her early 60s who died of dementia, and she donated her body to science. And she had also had Lyme disease and been treated with oral antibiotics and I believe intravenous antibiotics. And when they autopsied her brain, they did indeed still find spirochetes, Lyme bacteria in her brain. And she was supposedly treated for Lyme disease. So we're dealing with something here that is, I don't know. But at the minimum, they should be validating people like me. They should be validating people who are suffering with Lyme disease and giving them whatever comfort and whatever tools they need to remain as functional and comfortable as possible. But they're not even doing that. So, I don't know. Just sharing with you to share with anybody you know who may be going through this maddening reality. And indeed, if you are bit by a tick, don't wait for the rash. Most people don't get the ring. If you're bit by a tick, don't listen to them about how long it has to be stuck in you. Don't listen to them about they don't know. Honestly, they really don't know. They've come up with these interesting symptoms to kind of soothe people and to try to lessen the fear of it. If you get bit by a tick, if you find a tick on you, go to urgent care, get the antibiotics right away, and take a strong, full course of antibiotics right away. It's the only thing and best thing you can do. And I don't even know at this point if that's guaranteed, but I would not take a chance. And I'm going to leave you with that. If you've lasted this long, it's only because you probably have Lyme disease and you're going, oh, yes, brother. Oh, my God. Feel free to leave things in the comment box. I'll share with you what's worked for me, what hasn't worked for me. I've done a lot of experimenting, but, the human body is not a one-size-fits-all. And now they are using Adderall, actually, prescribing Adderall with people with chronic fatigue and Lyme disease, to let you know. You would have thought the doctors would have known that and offered that to me before I had to figure out that in such an unconventional, such a dangerous manner. But once again, like I said, my experience with doctors the last decade suffering in so much pain and with so much fatigue, I've literally lost the prime of my life. Who's going to give me that back? And right now, where I have everything I need to still contribute, and I'm still incredibly vital for my age, and to have this period in my life where these are supposed to be my golden years, to question what that is going to be like is just a really harsh reality. And nobody should have to suffer unnecessarily and be ignored and be gaslit. Nobody. So take care of yourselves and take care of each other, because I believe how we treat each other in the streets is our ultimate reality. Thanks for listening.